Good evening, everyone, and welcome to the solar class. Hopefully, you all have gotten your filters. Schiller's has got a few left. We got some more in today, and they're already flying off the shelf. So if you haven't got it, call tomorrow, or well, we're closed already, so don't call now. If you don't have one, you can hit me in the text. I'm going. I am going to type in my email. You can also send me an email. Um, I will also, because I still have people joining right now, I will do when I post the PowerPoint for this towards the end of the class. I'll do it at the end of the class when I open it up for questions. I'll go ahead and post the PowerPoint. That way, everyone who's here will be on it. And I will also include my email again. So if you don't get it right now, don't worry about it too much. It does look like how many people we got here? We've got 15, got 17 signed up as far as I know, and one person isn't making it tonight. So I am going to go ahead and start the presentation. So it's going to take me a second to share my screen and double click. Thank you. And start the PowerPoint. All right. So hopefully now you all should be seeing a big picture. I wish I had taken this picture. I absolutely love this picture of the crescent or the eclipse with the person behind it. I'm going, depending on where I go, I might try to do something like this, but it would be really hard. Our eclipse here, if you're in this area, is going to be way up in the sky. Basically, at somewhere like 55 to 58.9 degrees. So that's pretty vertical. So it'd be hard to do a shot like this, but I do love this shot. And I actually start with this shot, and I'll talk more about it, but there's really two different styles of shooting the eclipse. One is kind of more what I would consider the environmental shot, which would be the top shot where you have the person and you have the eclipse behind them. And then the other is more, I don't know, the scientific approach or just focusing on the eclipse itself. I personally will be doing both, but I work at Schiller's, so I have more cameras than really someone should have. So I will be able to do both. If you're not a camera person like me, you're going to have to figure out which you want to shoot. And we'll talk about both of them. We'll talk about the gear for both of them and everything. But first, let me see, why is my PowerPoint not advancing? Thank you. This is what we're going to cover. So first and foremost, I really want everyone to be safe. Enjoy it, but be safe. And I'm not talking about just your gear, but yourself. Again, don't look at the sun during the partial eclipse or when there's no eclipse. I mean, you can glance at it, but don't stare at the sun. Never point a telescope. I don't know why that went backwards. Don't ever point a telescope or a camera. Mostly if you have a telephoto lens on the camera at the sun for any period of time, you can damage your gear. In 2017, we had 3 cameras come in that were all ruined because they fried their sensor. I don't know if you guys can see, I've gone blank again, so I'm going to just leave. I'm going to leave this camera off right now. This is a bummer. I like this little camera. Oh, there I am. Hi. So after talking about safety, which is the most important thing, I'm not going to harp too much on it. I'm going to just talk about how to be safe. Then we're going to talk about style, gear, location. Most of you probably already have your locations picked, but if you don't, we'll talk about it, and we'll also talk about how to check the weather. I was checking the weather today, and I tell you what, a couple days ago, I was really worried, but it does seem to be, as we're getting closer, it's looking better and better. So that's a good positive thing. Then we'll talk about really probably why a lot of you guys are here is about the settings you want to use. And then I'll talk about telling a story, and then we'll do Q&A. I have demo on here, but that's just because for the in-person, I'm not going to do a demo here because it can't really go outside. So first of all, safety, safety, safety. Never point a camera or a telescope at the sun without the appropriate filter. In one of the slides down the I have the ISO 123 to whatever the number is filters. The ones you buy at Shoulders, those are all fine. Probably the ones you get through any of the reputable camera stores like Sammy's, B&H, Anorama. They're going to probably be fine if you get through, and if you go up to a science center or something like that. I don't think they have camera filters, but those glasses will all be fine. Just make sure you get them from someplace reputable. I do know Schiller's is out of the glasses. So, um, the sun can definitely cause blindness, temporary and permanent. So never point the sun at your eyes at the sun, a telescope at the sun. The only time it's going to be safe during the eclipse to look at and to photograph the sun without a filter is during totality. That about 4 minutes, depending on 3 minutes, 4 minutes, depending on where you're at, is the only time. And then you actually do want to take your filters off because you won't be able to get that corona with the filter on. So that would be the only time you'll be taking off your filters. And we'll talk a little bit about how the timing works and everything. And this means also do not look through your viewfinder without the filter on. If you have a DSLR, technically speaking, when you're not taking a picture, if it's just pointing at the sun, you're not going to really hurt the camera because the light goes right through it. But you're going to be basically having a laser beam coming out the back of your camera. Anything that gets in front of it will be burned, including your eyes, skin, or anything else. So really, just make sure you have that filter on. When it's coming time, put the filter on before you point it at the sun. That way you're perfectly safe. Now, people with mirrorless cameras, this question has come up a few times. Obviously, no, if you're looking at the back of the screen or your viewfinder and you don't have the filter on, you won't damage your eyes because the electronic viewfinder can't send out enough energy to hurt your eyes, but you will fry your camera, which all right, isn't as bad as frying your eyes, but still is going to cost you a pretty penny and you don't want to do it. This is what happens. Now, granted, the one on the left, they did purposely do this to kind of demonstrate it. So they left it on for like 15 minutes, but that's how bad you can fry it. The one on the right shows even with a DSLR, you can damage your lens. That is the shutter or the aperture that's been fried, so that lens is ruined, and I would imagine that camera also got ruined. So this is these are death to your cameras. Also, never put a filter behind the lens. Filter always goes in front of the lens. This is a demonstration of the appropriate filter, but for your eyes, but put behind in this case a telescope, and it's a laser beam, and it shoots even through the protective glasses. It shoots right through it, and if your eyes are on the other side, it will damage your eyes. So I hope I've got this down. Be safe. Do not point your camera at the sun without the proper filter on it. You will destroy your camera and possibly hurt your eyes. I hope I've made that point clear. I don't want to harp on it more just because, I hope you get it. I put this one up here mostly for people who have kids. Kids, if you have kids around you, definitely bring them with you. This is a really cool event. Kids will love it, but just be careful of them. They're kids. They don't always think, and they're going to drop the glasses and stuff like that. So just kind of watch them and stuff. The best way for mostly with kids, it's not bad for adults either. Have a baseball cap on, cup your hands around the sides, just minimize the possibility of them actually directly looking at the sun. All right. Some other things that people don't always think about. Now, the first one, extreme heat, we don't probably have to worry about it. The forecast looks pretty good. So I don't think we're going to have to worry about the extreme heat. I kind of pulled some of this from my 2017 presentation, so I thought I'd keep some of it in. But do also be aware of the outdoor hazards. If you're in an open field and stuff, you're probably pretty safe. I am planning on probably going up to a cliff or some rocks. I want to find something for the foreground. The picture you see here is from 2017. I was up at Fort Kaskaskia, which is overlooking the Mississippi River. So we were kind of up on the bluffs overlooking the river. Now, it wasn't rocky bluffs, it was a steep hill, though. And if we weren't careful, it would have been very easy to slip and fall down. So be aware of the environment. Right now, we're looking weather-wise, we're looking good. So you don't probably have to worry about extreme weather or anything like that. But of course, be aware of the conditions. You're going to be outside. You're also going to be outside for a while. This entire event will take a couple hours. So have some snacks with you, have some water with you. If you have other people with you, make sure you have enough for everyone. You don't want to be hiking someplace or getting someplace and then, oh my God, I'm hungry, and you go grab something and you get a line for some food, if you're in one of those big events, and the eclipse starts and you're coming up to get your food. You're not going to want to run, but you don't want to miss the eclipse. So make sure you have some food with you, would be the best thing to do. I'm personally, where the places I'm looking at going, there won't be any vendors, so I will be bringing in my own water, Gatorade, and some snacks and stuff like that. Also, car safety. Um, there's a possibility you might get stuck in the traffic or something like that. Make sure you got a full tank of gas. Your car is in good working condition. You don't want to get stranded someplace, right? Um, Also beware of distracted drivers. Now, if you're unfortunate enough to be when the eclipse is starting to happen or something, you don't want to be driving around with people trying to look at the eclipse and who knows what they're doing. But you're also going to probably be around a lot of other cars and people not knowing where they're going. So they might suddenly stop because they've missed their stop or change lanes to get off the exit or something like that. So be aware of other drivers around you. I mean, common driving sense and stuff, but there's going to be a lot of people in areas they're not familiar with. My personal plan is I'm going to get up stupid early. I'm going to get there stupid early. I want to be there before traffic, before people. I want to get the good spot where I want to be and all that sort of stuff. So I'm not going to worry too much. And I'm also going to places I am familiar with. But a lot of the people and the locations I have picked out, I have a feeling people are going to be trying to go there who are not as familiar with it. So be cautious. Now, when I was doing research, I saw COVID-19 come up. Hopefully, you know, I know it's still around and stuff. Just you probably won't have to worry about it. You're going to be outside and stuff like that. But if you are one of those people with immune compromise or something like that, take the precautions you need to take to make yourself feel safe and secure. Now, styles. These are the two different styles. The shot on the left is a nice tight shot. This is during totality, where the corona is nice and illuminated and stuff. And just to let you know, this is a single shot of the corona. Um, Later on, I'm going to talk about the multiple shot of the corona, which is really, you can see a little bit here the magnetic lines and stuff. So it's kind of cool, but through some processing, you can really pull those out, and I'll show you an example of that later. And then on the other side is a wide shot I took, because my focus on this is NASA is going to be able to take a much better shot than I ever will of that left one. What I can do that NASA can't do is to tell a story of the event around me, how it's looks, the people involved with it. That's what's interesting to me. If you're going with family, friends, kids, relatives, whatever, try to include them somehow in the pictures, because that's something that's going to be personal to you. And sorry about that. Personal to you, and again, something that the other companies won't have. Let's see if I can go back. Ooh, there we go. Something the other companies won't have. At the bottom, you can see kind of the range. If you want one of those tighter shots, you're going to want to be These are all for full frame. So if you have a crop sensor, remember you have to put that crop factor in here. In another slide, I actually have both of them, but you want to be somewhere between 200 to 800. Obviously, we've had a couple people come in and buy lenses just for this. Um, my recommendation is don't buy any special equipment like that for this. Buy a filter, yes, but don't go out and buy a new lens unless you're going to use that lens for other things. Then yeah, go ahead, buy a new lens. You know, hey, come in. I'm at work tomorrow, so I'll be happy to help you at Chillers. Um, and then the other side is a wide angle lens. I believe when I was shooting the particular shot you see there, I was using a 15 millimeter. I'll be honest, almost every one of my shots you see, I've done some manipulation. You cannot see, you could see the eclipse in this shot, but it was about 1/4 of the size you see here. So yes, I used Photoshop and I made it bigger so it's more prominent. You know, this is I'm not reporting this for a newspaper or for a scientific paper where accuracy is important. I'm doing this to tell a story. So I want to make sure people realize what's happening. So having a little bit bigger of an eclipse than the reality kind of shows that. Um, the camera you have now is perfectly fine. There isn't a camera that's been made in the last 15 years that won't do a wonderful job for this. Obviously, if you have a newer camera, higher resolution, you're going to get all the benefits you already know about. But there's no need to buy anything special. If you don't have a camera, a cell phone will work. You won't be able to get this good of a shot and all this. And I would probably just buy a second pair of glasses and put it in front of your camera on your cell phone to protect it. That'll work perfectly fine. Tripods. So you want to use a tripod for a couple reasons. First of all, you don't want to be holding your camera for hours on end. Um, and you also want to be able to, if you're doing the wide angle shot, you want to be able to keep a steady shot so the camera is, you know, you're taking the same foreground and everything. There's a shot we'll show later where it's multiple, you know, in post-production, you added multiple shots. So you see different stages of the eclipse, kind of like that intro one I did where it's on the bottom, but in a wide angle shot. And that's actually what I'm going for this year because I think it looks cool. Um, Also, I'm going to be using something that is called a tracker on my tight shot, so I won't have to constantly be adjusting my camera to keep the sun in the center. But if you're using one of the tighter shots and you're getting the tighter shots and you want to get the different phases, you will have to be constantly adjusting your camera to keep the sun in the center of the frame. So just keep that in mind. There's a thing I'll show you in a little bit where you can actually see how quickly with your given setup the sun will move out of the center. So it kind of will give you an idea of how often you have to recenter. During the partial eclipse, I plan on taking a picture every 5 minutes to build up my final shot. This will give me multiple different stages. It should give me plenty of shots. I probably won't even use them all, but I will have them at my availability. So having a nice, good tripod is going to make that a lot easier. I have on here remote shutter release. I find them very useful. They're not necessary, but they are very useful in the fact that it's right there. It's easy. You know, you'll just be dangling there. You won't have to, you know, fumble around, put your finger and maybe knock your camera slightly or something like that. So a shutter release cable, if you have one, great. A lot of the modern cameras allow you to interface with your camera via a YouTube app or a smartphone app, and they usually can be used as a shutter release. So it's not something you necessarily have to buy. Um, I personally like a very simple wired one because it doesn't need a battery. It doesn't need me to sync my phone and my camera together. I can definitely do that. But when I'm out and about doing something, I believe in keeping things as simple as possible. So there's less things that can go wrong. Obviously, an approved solar filter. Warning, do not use ND filter. So again, in general, I say don't use an ND filter. if you're an advanced photographer who uses ND filters, you have a 16.5 or greater, and you know what you're doing, yes, you can use an ND filter. I recommend that you put something covering your lens when you're not shooting, either the lens cap on or a sheet or something, just so just so the light's not going through. The ND filter will not cut nearly as much light as the solar filters, but 16.5 or greater, or I think it's 100,000 ND is another number you'll see out there. That will work. But again, only if you know what you're doing. If you don't know what you're doing, please come in tomorrow and get one of our last filters. Oh, look at that. So I'm using my mouse, and my mouse seems to be really sensitive on advancing. I'm going to start using my keys. Sorry about that. Um, so the filters that we have, there's different types of filters. The ones I really like is either the one on the far left or the far right, where they slide over. They got the 3 screws. You're not really tightening down the filter on your camera with those. You're kind of just keeping the filter centered. You want it nice and easy so you can take it off and put it on real easy. The camera is going to be pointed up. You're not really going to have to worry about the filter falling off. It won't fall off because your camera is going to be pointing up. So you just want to keep it centered there. There are screw-in filters. We sold out of screw-in filters like last week or something, just because people buy those because they're more familiar with them. For this kind of event, I prefer, like I said, the other ones, because the screw-on filters you have to screw on, you have to screw off, and that can be, that takes more time, and also, it's something you have to fumble with and something. Something I don't have a picture of, but I do want to talk about it. This was a trick. I was talking to another one of my friends who teaches out of B&H, and if you have one of the filters like the slide-on ones where you can see those little adjustment screws coming out, take a string, tie a string around that, and then take a string and tie it around your tripod long enough so it can easily go on and off, but short enough so it won't fall into the grass. That way, when you take it off, you're not trying to find someplace to put down your filter, or even more important, at the end of totality, when you're trying to put it back on, you're not going, wait, where did my filter go? It's right there. You know where it's at. Again, keep it simple. Keep everything right where you need it. And down there at the bottom, you'll see that it's ISO 12312-2 is how you'll see a lot. The semicolon 2015T, you'll also see it put that way. Either way, if it's the full with the 2015T or if it's just the ISO 12312-2, that is the certification you need to make sure that it is certified. The filters that we get from the Star Guide, the ones that we're selling, the slap-on ones, they actually don't have it on the filters, but I do believe it's on the boxes. And these are the same. This is the same person we used in 2017. My camera still worked afterwards, so they are good filters. On the left, that is my camera setup right there. That will be my camera setup for the wide angle. It's a Canon wide angle lens on there. That's a weird looking head on there. It's called a gear head, so I can finely tune things, but any head, whatever you have, will work. So that's that's what your setup's going to be. It's simple. It's nothing you're not really familiar with. Um, One thing I liked, I'm not sure how exactly I'm going to do it, but a lot of people have umbrellas that they have over their, obviously they're not blocking or it's not in their image, but they have it so the back of the screen, if it's nice and sunny, can be hard to see. So you're using it more so you can see your screen for your settings and everything like that. Um, Now this was up at Fort Kaskaskia, so I don't know if you guys were here in 2017. It was a hot day, so a lot of people had them up just to keep them cool. I have this in here. I don't think I have anyone for my astrophotography group in tonight's, but I've had them in a couple of my other classes for the eclipse. I am using this. What you see on the bottom of mine is a motorized tracker that allows it, basically will constantly rotate my camera at the exact speed of the sun, of the earth. It basically um, counteracts the rotation of the Earth, so my camera will stay focused and pointing at the sun. And this is the setup I'm using for my tight shot. I just want to put this in here so you can kind of see another setup, that there are different ways of doing this. And on the right side, that's just how I set mine up so I can track it. If you don't have this sort of thing, I'm going to go over this. I'm going to skip this, but that's what this is. Now, gear, what lens to use. On here, you'll see in black where it says the first frame 200 millimeters, 135 millimeter. The 200 millimeter is for full frame. The 135 is for a crop sensor. It is for a Canon. If you got a Nikon or one of the 1.5 craft factors, it'll be a little different, but close enough for you. So this kind of shows you what different lenses will how much the sun will fill the frame. Now a lot of people think, oh my god, I want the 200 millimeter, totally fill the frame. If your main interest is the Bailey beads and the diamond effect, or mainly just the Bailey's beads, yeah, 200 millimeter or 2000 millimeter, you're going to see the Bailey's beads better than I will at my 500 millimeter. But what you won't get in the 2000 millimeter that I'm going to get in my 500 is the full corona, which is the atmosphere coming away. And if you look at that, if you look at any of them, you can see it's not like a perfect circle. There's lines coming out in different spots. This has to do with the magnetic waves and the storms that's going on. So I want to have all of that information because I think really that's the beautiful part. There'll be a shot I show a little bit, which is what I'm actually going for this time. So this is if you don't know what lens to use, if you have multiple lenses, this is just a guide so you kind of know how much of the frame is filled with the sun, how much of the frame is filled with the corona. We've all seen this map. This is a NASA one. This is the one we have in front, but this is one I really like. This is Xavier's map. All the links for Xavier's, for the map, for this map, for the NASA map, for the next slide, which is for the slide with the calculator, and also the one for the timer. All these links will be at the end of the presentation. So when I upload the PowerPoint, you will have these links. So you don't have to write that down. You can write it down if you want. I like this map a lot. It is a Google interactive map, so I can zoom in and I zoom out. When you first actually open this map, it shows the entire world. So I had to zoom in to this point. But then I can even zoom in more. This is and drop a pin. I dropped a pin just outside of Carbondale, and it gives me this information. It gives me my latitude, my longitude, which is all great. It also gives me my height above sea level, 410 feet above sea level, which can come in another thing I'm going to show you. So that's one you want to recognize. It also will give me when the different events are happening. I'm going to go over this now. If you haven't heard these terms, C1, C2, max, C3, and C4, this is what we commonly describe the different events. C means contact. So C1 is first contact. That is when the moon starts to go in. That is the beginning of the eclipse, when the moon starts to go in front of the sun. C2 is the beginning of totality. So that is when the entire sun will be completely blocked out by the moon. Maximum will be the middle point, when the moon is in the middle of the sun. So that's the maximum amount of coverage you get. C3 is the end of totality. When you go back into partial eclipse, C4 is the end of the eclipse, when the moon is completely away from the sun. Between C1 and C2, and from C3 to C4, that is when your filters need to be on. Between C2 and C3, during the maximum, starting totality, that is when your filter comes off. So on this, it tells me the beginning times. Notice it says time UT. That's universal time. That is not St. Louis time or Carbondale time or wherever you're going to be. There is, unfortunately, I didn't find it, but there is apparently on this Google map, you can actually adjust it for local time. I used UT time so much of my Astro stuff. I kept it on UT and I never actually found that, but it's supposed to be on there. Someone told me about it. Basically, UT is, if you've ever heard the term Greenwich Mean Time, it's Greenwich Mean Time on a 24-hour clock. The other thing that's important here is next to the time, the UT time, is altitude. So that is the degrees above horizon. So if you notice here in Carbondale at C1, it starts at 59.7. By the end of it, we're at 46.3. So we know that the sun will be lowering in the sky as the eclipse happens. This is important when you're figuring out how you want your composition if you want a wide field composition. This is historic history of the weather. At this point, it's kind of becoming. I had this in here for people who hadn't figured out where they want to go. Just kind of see, what are your chances of having a clear sky. I think this is a better interactive map, or not interactive, but a better map of it. Up in the red, that's where you're more likely to have a cloudy day. In the green and blue is where you're more likely to have a sunny day. So if you haven't picked out your spot, you want to go southwest. You're more likely to get a clear sky. That said, we're getting close enough now. I would go and check what the actual weather forecast is. And this is just as close up. 2 weeks ago when I first started this class, this was important. We're getting close enough now where you can actually kind of pick out where you want to go and get the weather forecast. Any weather forecast will work. I use, a couple different weather forecasts. They're all going to be pretty accurate. So going back to this, again, I have this a little bit bigger in case you can't see it. The important things on here that you're about to need to know is your altitude above sea level. You're going to need to know the altitude of the sun, which is, again, the 59.7. The rest of the stuff is good to know time-wise. But this here, my next slide, I think it is, yeah. All right. So my next slide is actually going to be a cheat sheet for you guys. And I'm sorry, I couldn't give you all cheat sheets. I have this all printed up as a cheat sheet that you can go. But I have an example of the cheat sheet I made for my camera, which I'm shooting with a Canon R8, a 400 millimeter tracked on this particular one. And these are different times and settings I'm going to use. And how I came up with those is by this Xavier second one, the time calculator. So the first thing you'll notice in the blue area is I have 59 degrees because that's the beginning of this, where the altitude above the horizon. Next, I have the elevation of the observer. That it's actually wrong because I forgot to convert to metric. This is in metric. So make sure you do the conversion into metric. Next important thing is to put in your ISO sensitivity. You want to use your native sensitivity of your camera. Your native sensitivity is basically where you're not turning up the ISO at all. That is what the sensor normally takes in. So for anyone, that's basically the lowest ISO you can go to. Unless you have one of the cameras that allow you to go to an ISO that will suddenly change a different color from the other ISOs, and those are actually uses math basically to cheat. Most cameras are nowadays, their native ISO is ISO 100. Unless you're Sony shooters, a lot of the Sonys are 6400 or 64 ISO. And there are a couple cameras out there on the market right now that have a 50 ISO. Right. If you have an older camera, and these are going to be probably at least 10 years old, there are still cameras out there that have a native ISO of 200. But I chose 100 because that's what most cameras have out there. I have the aperture set at f11 because for my setup, f11 all the way across is just, don't want to change my ISO. I don't want to change my f-stop. I only want to change one thing. It's going to keep it simple. So the way I have it set up, ISO 100, f11, The only thing I'm going to have to be changing during this entire thing is my shutter speed and taking off and on the filter. Keep it simple. You want to have time to observe the other events happening. You want to be able to look around, see how people are reacting. There are some really cool things. I have some pictures of like these the little, if you're in tree area or if you bring a colander, you can use it to project the eclipse onto the ground. And it's just some really cool things happening. Besides, if you're lucky enough to be in a field where you can have a 360 degrees of the horizon, you'll have a 360-degree dusk, which is so cool. And then you also want to pay attention to the temperature drop, the animals and bugs and all that. It's a lot of cool things happening. So you really want to keep having to deal with your camera to the minimum. So at partial phase, which will be between C1 and C2, I have on there the top one. You can see the blue dot where I'm circled, and it says 2 starlight filter. That's approximately what most filters, astro filters are, and will give you a really close starting point. I also took circled on there Bailey's beads, the diamond rings, and then inner corona all the way down, inner corona down to outer corona. That will be bracket. I'll talk about that in a second. And then earth shine. So these are different exposures that I'll have to change. I'm talking about right now just the partial one. So this is my settings. My settings will be ISO 100, f11 at 100th of a second. That is going to be the majority of the time. I'm only going to be changing that right before, through totality, and right after, just after the end of totality, at which point I'll be changing it, and we'll talk about those in a second. On the other side, next to that, you see where I have sensor type full frame. I have focal length 150, my camera lens. One of the important things this tells me is what my exposure limit is. The slowest I can take a picture without getting streaking, without basically getting motion blur. So in my setup, I can set it at basically 1 in a 2.5, which my camera doesn't have. So 1 1/3 of a second. If I go to 1.5 seconds, 1 second, 2 seconds, I'm going to start getting blur, and the sun will be blurry. That won't be a sharp shot. So I need to stay above that shutter speed. Now, again, I'm using a tracker, so for me personally, that is not a factor in. But if you're not with a tracker, that might be something you need to factor in, mostly if you're trying to get the outer corona, because if you do the math on this, you'll want to shoot up to 6 seconds. But the outer corona won't be as affected by the motion as much as right around the sun. So use that as you will. If you notice down here, I actually do with an down below, I did with an 18 millimeter lens or a super wide lens. This part here gives me an example of how small the moon actually looks with an 11 millimeter full frame or 18 millimeter full frame, but I can shoot up to 11 seconds without any tracking. So that's really some good, useful information if you want to figure out your own exposures and everything. If you just want to go out there and shoot, here's a cheat sheet for you. And if you guys, I'll again put out my email. Go ahead and take a picture of this. If you want to send me an email, I can send you this. I don't have this with me as a PDF, but I can send out a JPEG of this if you need me to. Just email me, and I'll be more than happy to send you out a JPEG of this. If you come into the store for any time between now and the eclipse, we have these up, and you can just ask for on the counter. So the way I have this set up, starting on the left side, I have f-stops. There are, depending on what f-stop you want to use, different cameras have different sweet spots. F11 is a lot of sweet spots for cameras. This is one of the reasons I've chose F11. For the most part, F11 all the way across is going to work fine for you unless you're really working on trying to get those outer parts of the corona, or if you're trying to get the earth glow, which I'll show in a minute too. F11 is not bad, and it's a good starting point. ISO, again, I have the three most commons, 100, 64, and 50. Now, the first one, I put this in here for the advanced people who do have ND filters. For most of you guys, if you have a solar filters, you want to use the next column. It says solar filters, you want to use 1/100th of a second. Now, I didn't put 1 over 1/100th because most cameras will just say 100 on the top. So you'll be familiar with that. That's the time you want to use, 1/100th of a second. There are some other events that are going to happen. I'm going to show some examples and talk a little bit more about those. The Bailey's beads and the diamond rings. These are two events that happen right in the transition from partial to totality. So these events happen right at C2 and C3. They last approximately 7 seconds. They happen very fast. And they don't happen every time. It kind of depends on how the moon is crossing the path of the sun. If it's one of the plateau areas of the moon that's breaking, first breaks or is the last part to break in front of the sun, you won't get the Bailey's beads. But if it's one of the mountain regions, you'll get the Bailey's beads. And I don't know of anyone who knows this, if we're going to get good Bailey's beads or diamond rings. So if you're trying to get these, they're really cool, but they're very hard to get. And if this is your first eclipse, I wouldn't focus on doing these. I would focus more on just enjoying this particular event. And then the next part is the chronosphere. This is during totality at F11. I'm going to start at 200th of a second and shoot all the way to a 60th of a second. This is called a bracket. What I'm going to do is cut my time in half each time. So my first exposure will be at 200th of a second. My second exposure will be at 100th of a second. My third exposure will be at a 50th of a second, and then a 25th of a second, a 13th of a second, either an eighth, probably I'll do a sixth of a second because it just works easier. A sixth, a third, a second, and work it that way all the way to 6 seconds. This is going to give me what's called a bracket. So I'm going to keep the ISO the same. I'm going to keep the f-stop the same. I'm going to use my shutter speed to change the exposure, giving more and more light. This is what my shots are going to look like. The first shot up there in the top left corner is where it's at a 200th of a second. You can barely see the eclipse happening, right? But if we're lucky enough to have, right now we're coming into solar maximum activity, so there's a good possibility we're going to get prominences, which are also known as sun flares, and we might see them on the edge, and they're really cool. If you are shooting too bright, you won't see them. So I want to start a little dark because they won't be white. They will be pink reddish color. They're basically giant, humongous fireballs, bigger than the earth. And they will kind of loop up. They look really cool. And when I show you a picture that has them, I'll point them out. And then the next one is 100th of a second, 50th, 25th, and all the way up until it's well exposed. And the center part is completely useless, but that outer part, you can still see part of the coronas. So this is called a bracket. With this bracket in post-production, and I will be doing a video on how to do this and putting it in our YouTube, and I will have in our blog. Silver has a blog section. If you don't know, please go check out the blogs because I work hard on them. And I don't think enough people read them. I try to get really good information in them, but I will do a blog next week and have a link to a video where I work through on how to do the post-production. But this is kind of so when you bracket, you're taking the exact same picture of the same subject at several different exposures. In post, you blend them together to bring out the details of the corona. So I kind of show you right there. I'm using layers and Photoshop and all that sort of stuff to bring it out. But if you can see here, or even more important here, because this is a high res shot of it, you see those fine lines? Those are actually magnetic lines. So this is the magnetic lines of the sun interacting with the coronasphere, and you can pull these out. You can also see up on about the 1 o'clock position on the eclipse. That is a promenade. That is a solar flare being exploding at the time of this shot. And these happen. They're not like a big flash, like a like a flash camera. They take a little time, so it'll be there for a little bit. The other interesting thing on here, if you go back to, I don't know if I can go back easily, where I have on here the e glow, which is earth glow, the light from the sun is still hitting a lot of the earth, right? It's only the part of totality where there's no light at all. The light from the earth is reflecting back onto the moon. And if you get the exposure right, you can then also blend in what's known as an earth glow shot. So that is the surface of the moon taken at the time of this eclipse. So this is a lot of post production, but this image is what I'm going for this time. It's stunning. This is why I really like. I'm going to do mine a little bit different. I don't think the D Max, the blacks are a little bit, I want to make it a little bit punchier, but I really like this shot and I'm going to go for something like this. And it's good to have a goal. So let's talk a little bit more about settings. We are less than a week away. Right now we're cloudy. I think tomorrow is supposed to be cloudy, but I know we have some sunshine coming before the eclipse. Do your best to go outside, put your filter on, aim at the sun, practice focusing, practice the exposures. Your exposure wants to be that middle exposure where the center is brighter, but it goes as it goes around, it becomes darker. You want to practice your focus. We're at a high again, like I said, we're getting close to the solar maximum activity. There should be plenty of sunspots for you to focus on. You only see one in this particular picture. I think this is from 2007, not positive. But you should have plenty of sunspots to focus on. If there are no sunspots, focus on the edge. Um, if you're good with manual focus, I highly recommend you do it manually. If you're not, set your camera on autofocus and get the good sharp focus and then turn off the autofocus. That way your camera won't accidentally shift to a different focus if, I don't know, we might get lucky and the SSI might pass in front, a bird might fly, something might not trick your camera to focus someplace off. And if you're not paying attention, you might have a lot of out of focus pictures. So once you get your camera in focus using autofocus, turn it off. I would also check it very throughout the event just to make sure nothing's happened. Another important thing, auto white balance. You do not want to be on auto white balance. You want to turn off your auto white balance, go to daylight, which will be the sun. If you don't know how to do that, you can come into the store. There's YouTubes. You can send me an email. I can walk you through it. I can't do it right now because each camera is a little different on how it gets to the how you set up or how you get to your auto white balance. Most of the time, if you have a quick menu or something like that, or if you just go to the menu, it's usually in that first screen or two. But you want your auto white balance to daylight or full sunshine, or if it's an emblem, it'll be just a little sun with, a little circle with lines coming out. Looks like the sun. Shooting. So the earth is, as we all know, is spinning. That's how we have, hopefully there's no flat earthers who world I'm rocking right now, but the world is a globe and it spins. And we rotate about exactly 15 degrees in 1 hour. So if you're shooting with a 500 millimeter frame, the sun will cross your entire frame in approximately 2 minutes. So that's why you have to constantly be adjusting where you're aiming at the sky, most if you're using a longer lens. I hear a lot of people say this is a one lifetime of experience. This is my second one, so I'll disagree with that. But I will say the next one happening in continental USA is 20 years from now in 244. If you want to, you can come join me in 2027. I'm going to go down to Lexor. in Egypt. It's going to be cool. There'll be some, cool old Egyptian stuff in the foreground. It might be really neat. It also might be, death defying, because who knows what's going to happen in the Middle East by then. Um, if you fail to plan, you plan to fail. So practice, get out your gear, test things. We're going to be talking about an app shortly, and it has a tutorial and a step through. Practice, go through the tutorials, understand this. You don't want to be playing with this stuff that day, because if something happens, if something isn't set right and you need help, or you need to be connected to the World Wide Web and you're in a remote location with no service, you can't get connectivity, you want to have everything as prepped as possible. This totality at maximum in this area is going to be 4 minutes and 8 seconds, which is about twice as much as 2017, but still not a lot of time. You want to be prepared. You want to do some dry runs if you can. We do have some time. We're going to have some daylight, so do some dry runs. You also want to make sure you have spare batteries with you, spare memory cards. The total of the time is like 3 hours and 30 minutes from C1 to C4. And if you're doing like me, where you'll be taking a lot of shots, you might go through a battery or two. So you want to make sure you have plenty of battery and plenty of memory space. This is a visualization, and again, this link is on that back page. But basically, you put in a full frame, you put in your focus link, you click the Earth's rotation, and you can sit there with a clock and time how quickly that moves out of the frame. I kind of give these because they're kind of fun to play with and look at, and it kind of really gives you a sense of what it's going to be like. This is part of the planning. Watching this, yeah, it's silly. You know this is going to happen, but when you actually see it happening, you'll appreciate it more, and you'll be prepared for it. Because it's crazy. You're sitting there looking at your camera, and it's moving across. And if you've never experienced that, it's kind of weird. So you want to make sure you are prepared for this. All right. Shooting. Consider how many frames, if you're doing a multiple exposure one, how many frames you're going to want, how long the eclipse last. Will the exposures be changing? We have the sheets to help us through all that. You want to make sure, again, you have a solid tripod. Will there be anything in your way during the entire event? We start up at 59 degrees above the horizon, but we drop down to 46, and it moves towards the west. So you want to make sure there's no trees in the way. You want to make sure there's not a water tower or anything like that. You want to take these things into effect once you find your location. Also take into effect drive time. Not only the normal drive time to get to where you want, but what if there's going to be traffic? If you're going to Carbondale, Cape Girardeau, I have a feeling you're going, or Jackson or something like that. I have a feeling there will be traffic. In 2017, I picked kind of a remote area outside of Chester, Illinois, and there wasn't much traffic. Didn't have much traffic either way, but we also left early. We got there at 8 o'clock in the morning, and the event wasn't happening until early noon. So we got there way ahead of time. If don't try to get there, it takes me 2 hours. The event happens in 2 hours and 15 minutes. I guess I better start packing my camera. You're going to miss something if you do something like that. So be ready and be there early. So these, if you're on a tight shot, these are the main events most people try to get. The Corona Totality, the Diamond Ring, and the Bailey's Beads. We've already talked a good bit about the Corona Totality. Now let's talk a little bit about Diamond Rings and Bailey's Beads. Bailey's Beads happened before the Diamond Ring. I kind of wish I would put the times on the cheat sheet the other way around, but I did. Sorry about that. Diamond rings happen as the sun is still peeking over the edge of the moon, but just a very slender part. And it makes that bright spot right there. And then you'll see the corona around the rest of it. Bailey's beads happens as that is disappearing and going into totality. And basically what it is, the Bailey's beads the top of the mountains of the moon will totally be blocking the sun, but in the valleys of those mountains, the sun is still coming through. So it's basically the diamond rings smaller and a lot more of them. So instead of being a 2 carat diamond, these are quarter carat diamonds. Good way to think about it. Um, and again, from the diamond rings until totality, you have approximately 7 seconds. And you have to change your exposure to get the diamond rings and the Bailey's beads, 2 different exposures. So you have to be quick and you have to know how to change your gear quick. This is why you want to practice. Um, that said, that's why I say if this is your first time shooting, you might want to skip these 2 events. It'll be a lot less stress if you just watch it happening. But if you want to do it, these are the 2 things. They happen quick. Be prepared. I'm going to have my camera set on high speed sync. So once I get that diamond ring, I'll do a quick burst for the diamond rings, like from 7 seconds to about 4 seconds, quickly change my shutter speed, and then just hold the shutter open until totality starts, or I run into what's known as your buffer. So the buffer, if you don't know what that means you've got so many pictures trying to read onto the memory card that it just stops shooting. So if you hit those buffers, you're done shooting the Bailey's beads. So you do want to be careful that you don't start too early, but you also don't want to start too late. Also, if you have not heard, there's a comet up there. It's visible right before dusk or right at sunset called P2 Pons Brooks. I've already gotten a pretty nice shot of it a couple weeks ago. I haven't seen it with my naked eye, but I hear it is now visible with the naked eye right at sunset. There is a possibility. I would not get your hopes up too high unless you have a camera capable and a tracker and some stuff, but there is a possibility it will be visible during totality. What will definitely be visible is Venus, Jupiter. Venus and Jupiter will probably Venus definitely will be visible. Jupiter will probably be visible with the settings I gave you. So if you're not on a super, super tight shot, if you want to get Uranus, Jupiter, Pons Brooks, Mercury, Venus, Saturn, and Mars, I think I figured it out to be about 24 millimeter frame to get all of those, maybe 35, somewhere in that range. I am going to try to do that. I am not, I am not expecting to be able to catch Pons Brooks, but I am going to try to catch that. So these are some of the other cool things I was talking about. On the left, that is just the sun coming through trees with leaves. You'll get hundreds of little crescent suns. It is so cool. The first time as an adult, that I noticed an eclipse. It wasn't even a full eclipse; it was a partial eclipse. I came out of the studio and I was going to grab lunch, and I just happened to look down, and it's like, why am I seeing all these crescent? And it dawned on me that there was a partial eclipse happening. You don't need a totality to see these, by the way. So if you're ever in a partial eclipse, all of these work in partial eclipse too. On the top left, on top right, that's just a normal strainer or colander, whichever you want to call it, held up so you can see through it, and gives you. It's basically working as a bunch of little apertures so you can see little crescent suns. And then the other one, the bottom middle, that's just taking a telescope and pointing it at into a box so there's not direct light on the back and you can see it pretty well. And if you focus it right, you'll actually see like sunspots on it and stuff. So that's, if you have a group, mostly if you have a group with kids, that's a fun way of viewing. So a lot of people can see what is happening. You don't have to do it for everyone. Everyone doesn't have to look through the telescope. This way, multiple people can see it at a time. You know, I say this all the time in all my classes, my landscape and whatever class I'm teaching, is we are visual storytellers. So tell a story, find something interesting, find something unique that's happening around here, around you during the eclipse. I love this shot. The kids just enjoying the event. This is my shot. This was my planned shot from 2017. That is the Mississippi River in the foreground. I love the fact that we actually got clouds because I think the clouds just add so much of it. I love the fact that the top of the clouds are actually in sunlight, but the bottom parts are in the are in the totality, so you get that effect. And then you can see part of the the, like I was saying, the 360 degrees of dusk. You can see part of it here. I might try to grab one of those 360 cameras if I'm in some place where I can actually get 360s, or I might just spin one of my cameras around and try to get 360 shots because that is just so cool. Also, notice about dead center, just a little above where the eclipse is, there's a planet. So you can definitely see, you will see um, when it gets down. If you have good eyes, I've got pretty dang good eyes. I could actually see stars. It was hard for me to pick up with my camera settings at the time, but I could actually see stars. It's really cool. What's also really cool is you'll see there is a jet trail. Like looking, if you look at that dark cloud that's about halfway, a little to the right of the center and about center vertical. I believe that was the NASA chase plane. They were chasing the eclipse across the country. And from the pictures I've seen of that from the plane, that would have been about the right perspective. That was probably that NASA plane at that particular time. And I think NASA is doing it again. And also, if you decide to, you can hop on Southwest. They're doing the same thing. Um, Again, this is, these are the people are around. These are the people all enjoying it, and I just love this because this brings the human factor into the eclipse. And if you think about how many stories happen about how many you know throughout history, how what eclipse meant to the ancient peoples and stuff, it's really cool. It still means a lot to us. So these are what it's kind of what I'm going to try to do with my wide angle camera. And the it's actually funny, the one on the left is not even a total eclipse. If you notice, it never goes into totality there. So you can actually do these during partial eclipse too. But it goes from the beginning where the sun is completely unblocked, and you can see what's quite often a lot of people call it the Pac-Man, as the sun is eating the moon, and then the sun regurgitates the moon. I guess I don't know if you do that, if that works. And then the other one, just someone out observing the eclipse with again that panoramic. So the way this one on the right is done is he took and just picked the one. Whoa, darn it! Sorry, pick the one shot that had the guy in the right position focusing on it, and then use that for the foreground, and then just added all the other different shots he did. It's simple, and Photoshop, if you want to know how to do it, again, look for the blog. The picture by Ted is my favorite shot from 2017. They did their work, they planned it, and they found a great spot. They had the person right there at the diamond rings, and I just absolutely love that shot. It's emotional, it's adventure, it's very cool. The other shot on the right, I don't know if that's from a total one or just a partial one, but I also really love that one. That happens to be in London. That's the big Ferris wheel in London. Again, it's telling a story, an event, a time, a place, and happening. And that I love in photography. And I think I'd prefer to have, well, personally, I wanted to buy one of TED shots and have it up on my wall, but I would prefer to have something like that as opposed to, the ones you see from NASA, the really close ones. If though you're taking the really close shots, there are different ways of presenting it too. I really liked what this guy did with the diamond rings. So you have the diamond rings on either side and totality in the middle. You have the either the long one or the diagonal one, where it's the Pac-Man eating the moon into totality and then throughout. I like this presentation. I think it looks really cool. Um, if you notice the one that's on the top right, the suns during partial eclipse are orangey yellow, but totality it's white. The reason is a lot of these solar filters will actually alter the color, to that orangish yellow color. And then when you take it off, it's going to be white corona. If you like that, cool. If not, you can always color correct that in post production. I personally like that. I actually would have done and taken the center one and color corrected so it was that same warm color. But doing it this way too has its merits because the totality with the corona stands out from the other shots. So it's it's a preference thing, and that's where being an artist and telling a story comes in from your point of view. And these are some other ones. I love the bottom one here. This is basically going in from diamonds to Bailey's beads and from Bailey's beads to diamonds. I absolutely love that. This is one of the reasons I'm going to be shooting high speed sync. I want to build something like this because I love that one a lot. I also love the top left one because it does the same Pac-Man thing, but it has the two diamond rings on either side. Even though I think the orientation of that one, I think one of the orientations is off on that one, but whatever. But it really has the corona really, really pops in that one. So I really like that one for the corona and for showing the diamond rings on either side. So these are just kind of show you when I go through the processing video, I won't be showing each and every different way of doing it. I'm going to show the ways I'm doing it. Um, and I might talk about the other ways, but I'll probably just show like 2 or 3 examples on how to different, one full, one on exactly how to pull out the corona detail, and then on the way I decide to present it, either like the diamond ring ones on the bottom here, or one of these two. I don't know yet. Stay tuned. This means questions and answers. So I'm going to take this off in a second. I'm going to go. Here are the links. You have the NASA, you have the Xavier, the shutter speed, which is also by Xavier, this visualizations, cloud cover. So that's the statistic one. It's really not as important now again because we're so close. And this is the timer app. I highly recommend everyone get this timer app. If you can't write this down, it's simply Google Solar Eclipse timer and it will come up. This is going to give you audible cues of when the eclipse is starting, when totality is starting, when totality is ending, when totality is at max, and it will work off of your GPS on the phone, so it'll be exact for your location. It will also give you audible cues, I believe, of take off filter now, put filter on now. Totality starts in 10 seconds. So if you're trying to get the Bailey beads, you can get your timing down. For Bailey's beads and the diamond ring, you actually want your filter off. So there will be technically a few seconds with a filter on, and it won't be totality. Your camera will be fine. Also, if you're using a wide angle, there's quite often I take pictures that have the sun in it. Technically speaking, you won't fry your camera. Um, that said, I definitely would not keep it focused on the sun for any period of time. If you're going to do a wide angle, have the filter on it, shoot protect your gear and everything. If you just want to be going around with your camera and taking pictures of people around and you want to take a quick shot up of it, you probably will be fine. If you have a wide angle, something 15, 24 millimeter, maybe I probably wouldn't go past 35, but use your own judgment, be quick with it. You'll probably be fine. Beyond 50, I definitely am, because if 50 is what the human eye sees at. So if you look at the sun with your eyes, you will hurt your eyes if you stare at the sun. So the same happens if you stare at the sun with a 50 millimeter, you will hurt your camera. I'm going to escape this. I'm going to stop share. I am now. If you have questions, feel free to pop them up. Apparently, they're all. Could you show the previous slide? Oh, sorry, I don't know. Links so I can quickly take. All right, I'll go back in a second and put back up both of those slides so you can take pictures of the links. I have an EOS 7D. Can I find a remote shutter? We should definitely have that remote shutter in stock at Schiller's. Definitely the cable one, which is again the one I recommend because it doesn't take batteries, so you don't have to worry about having batteries on it. Let me go back to screen share. All right, I'm going to keep this up for about a minute and then I will do the other one. Honestly, at this point, the other one is the more important. The interactive is going to give you some great time and stuff like that. But you definitely want to download that app tonight. It costs $1.99 to download the data for the 2000 for this Eclipse. So you want to make sure it's $1.99. It's definitely worth it to save your camera. You can download the app for free, but for a specific Eclipse, it costs $1.99 per Eclipse. So this is an app I keep on my phone. I didn't use it in the 2000. I did use it for the Ring of Fire Eclipse. It's a really good app. It's really is helpful. By the way, just going back to glasses and filters, if you have filters from 2017 and glasses from 2017 or from last year's annular Ring of Fire eclipse, as long as they're in good condition, no holes, no wrinkles, no rips or anything in them, they are fine. They do not expire. It's as long as they were protected and everything. But if you have any doubt, replace them. It's they're not that expensive. Here's that other one, by the way. They're not that expensive. So go ahead and make sure you save that. Make sure you spend the money if you have any doubts. A good way to test your filter to look for holes. If you have an incandescent light bulb still in your house, turn it on like a 100-watt one and put the filter between your eyes and the light. You should be able to barely make out the filaments, but nothing else. And move it around and look in the corners and stuff. I somehow, between my first class and my second class, something happened to my filter. Some water or something got on it, and I had to buy a new one. So they can be damaged, and you don't want to be using a damaged one. It can definitely damage your sensor. Hopefully everyone got that. I'm going to pop out of this. I am back here. Any more? Oh, look, more messages. Yay. All right. Do you have, you don't need to remove your UV filter. Your UV filter is on there just really to protect your lens from drops, scratches, and stuff like that. It won't affect the solar eclipse in any way. I need a remote shutter for my 6T tether. Do you yeah, so that one also. Actually, I think I don't know, the 6D might take the same as the 5D or it takes the same as the 7D. We should have some of those, but with everyone asking, I don't know. Everyone might be buying them tomorrow. So definitely try to get in there early. How much are the filters for the cameras? The ones we have are $69.95, I believe. Is it okay to video record and take images with a drone? Filter. With the drone one, you're probably wide enough and you won't get a long still shot of it. So yeah, I think you'll be fine. If I had a drone, I'd probably be focusing on the down on the ground of the people and stuff, because I think that might be really good. So the reason, Jim, we do it in post-production as opposed to back in the film days where you could do it on a single sheet is for control. Um, it's it's so much easier if you need to slightly move something. If your exposure is a little off or something, you have each one so you can control each one individually and put it together. And it's really easy in Photoshop. Ooh, knock that, moves everything. It's really easy in Photoshop to blend. It's you'll load all your shots as layers, and then you just use one of a selection of different blending modes. um, that one I will definitely I'll talk about in the YouTube or in the post-production blog. – . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . Karen, are there specific settings I need to turn on or off on any camera for pics? I'm not sure what you mean for the pic. Um, the settings, you want to be on manual, so you control your ISO, your f-stop, and your shutter speed manually. You don't want the camera doing that because that can, that can vary as exposures. What happens when you're on auto exposure or on any of the autos? Oh, it looks like my camera's going to overheat, so I might disappear here for a second. I'm sorry. Um, it will try to adjust the exposure, and you don't want that. You want to be able to control your exposure. So you want to be on manual exposures. You want to be on manual focus once you get your focus, or do it manually, whichever way works best for you. And you want to be on onto off of auto white balance. You basically want to be off all your autos and be in manual control. Still have card and batteries for, yeah, we got plenty of cards and batteries for 90Ds. Picture, don't know what picture mean, Karen. Hopefully, Karen, does that answer your question? And if anyone wants to pop off the mute, you can pop it off now. All right, cool. Do you have any? Ooh, compact flash. Oh, good question. Thanks. Good point. Compact flash. I know we had some a couple days ago. They are getting hard to get, and they're getting stupidly expensive. Last time I know, we still had some. Once your focus is set on the sun, will you need any significant adjustment to? No, the sun will stay relatively the same infinity distance. So once your focus, I would still check it because you're pointing up, and if you have an older lens, sometimes they will just from gravity change. So I would check it every once in a while just to make sure your focus hasn't shifted. Um, I am going to pull this once you're I'm going to hold off on that for a second. I'm going to see if I can find, I made a PowerPoint PDF. Let me see if this loads in. I hope this loads in. Please load in. Did I drop the right thing in there? I dropped the wrong thing in there. All right, ignore that screenshot. I don't know. That's for me doing a class. There goes the PowerPoint. It might take a second or two. It's a 19.38 megapixel. If you guys have trouble downloading the PDF doesn't download or something, email me at and so it is uploading right now. There is my direct email, should be on there, tfarmer@chillers.com. Have a good night. I will stay on. I'm going to stop the recording now because we don't need to record all this sort of stuff. Um, Thank you all for coming. If you have questions, feel to reach out to me, tfarmer@chillers, Tim, tfarmer@chillers, or you can call or you can come up. I'm constantly been answering questions, so hopefully could not be sent.